We're back testing bikes and we're looking at the Cervelo S5. In part 1, we did the unboxing of a fantastic looking bike launched in 2018. And in this episode, we join Chris Barlin in the workshop as he talks us through the processes involved in putting together what's a complete rethink of a traditional road bike.
So first things first, we've got to find all the little parts that we need and get rid of all the parts that we don't need.
So this is Chris, he's going to be doing our build. You'll hear me questioning every now and again a couple of bits of the pieces that he's working on. I think that what's important is to observe how the bike is for the mechanic to work on and how it comes together as out of the box. So that's just to explain what Chris is up to. I'm going to step off camera now and it's over to Chris to tell the rest of the construction story.
Awesome, thanks Rob.
In Australia, the S5 with SRAM Red eTap retails for $14,000. The Dura-Ace equivalent with Di2 shifting is $14,500. Bikes at this level need a certain amount of care in the workshop. We've recorded Chris putting the bike together and we've got his comments at different phases of the construction.
The other first thing we need to do is charge the batteries. So these batteries always come out of the box flat, and you'll learn pretty quickly that you build the bike and you've got it all together, and then you go to put the batteries in and shift the gears, flat. So then we've got to wait another half an hour to get the batteries charged. So we're going to charge them first, put them on now, and then as we build the bike, they'll be ready to go when we need them at the end. So these SRAM batteries the little covers actually come with a really cool battery indicator. So it's not really an indicator, but it helps you remember if the battery's flat or not. I think all brands recommend putting the anti-slip paste in the seat post, especially carbon on carbon. I think that it is a common problem throughout the whole bike industry. I don't think that there's any brand that sort of gets away with no slippage. This is just a way to prevent that happening. So if you do install them correctly with paste and Loctite and things like that on the correct bolts in the correct places, you'll hopefully not have that sort of problem. We'll just leave that loose for now because we've got to do our adjustments later on. But it's all neat and all there now.
So Chris has explained to me that the Cervélo comes with a whole bunch of different wedges to adjust handlebar angle. In other words, you want it up like this, or you want it old school Armstrong pistol style, or you can have it down or even floating that way. But there's a neutral position as well. So we're going to do all of the minor adjustments later on. There's also a whole bunch of different wedges that are supplied to Cervélo dealers, and they come underneath the stem, is that right?
So to increase the stack height, so they fit underneath this part here and just raise the stem.
In Australia, the standards suggest that the right hand lever have to activate the front brake and the left the rear. I grew up as a BMXer, so my request is for the opposite. Right for rear, left for the front. On the Cervélo S5, because of the unique stem configuration, Chris has to think about where the brakes go early in the build.
So what we'll do is we'll start at the lowest spot, which sort of looks the coolest, and we'll work up from there. start off with everything pretty loose. Get it all arranged close to where it would be, and then we'll work on your measurements from there. Once we've got it all measured up to your size, then we'll come back, redo everything, make sure it's all put together correctly, cut the seat post if we need to, arrange the hoods and everything so that they're in the right spot, and then we'll finish the build off. Cervélo have designed a bar which is a little bit more mechanic friendly. You don't have to actually put the wires or cables or hoses through the handlebars. Inside the handlebars, they've actually got a nice tube or slot to run them in, which is a lot better for a mechanic. So it means that we don't have to fiddle around holding the handlebars while they're trying to get slotted on. So these little mounting brackets for the handlebars of each designed for left and right, so you've got to make sure you get that right and which way they go forward as well. These are the parts that we would change around if we were to change the angle of your handlebars.
Okay.
So we can play with that later once we get you set up.
Yeah,
correct.
Cool. Okay.
Now I've got the bars on, we're basically going to do a really rough put together to get your measurements correct. So we're going to install the levers in the right spot, mark where they go, measure your seat height, put the wheel on, put it on the ground, make sure all the measurements are correct, and then we'll come back, redo everything, add the stack height if you need some, and yeah, go from there. So we're just popping this on without the rotor on at the moment, which we'll put on later just so we can do the measurements for the bike. And then once we've done that, we can put it all back together properly. This one here goes in, pushes through, turns a quarter turn, and then you lever the cam up to tighten the wheel. So it's really fast. This is tightened up now. This is designed to undo, turn a quarter turn, and pull out, and then within 2 or 3 seconds you've got your wheel out. So. And then if you're slotting it back in, slot it back in, push it through, turn it, and do it up, and then it's pretty fast. Go for it. So that will be in. No rotor on there at the moment, but push it through and then push the axle so it pops out the end, turn it, and then clamp.
Well, there's a bit of a bummer. I thought that we'd have the lovely finished product on the seat post, but it turns out we're going to have to cut the thing and then cut our own little wedge in it. But anyway, these are the things that happen, and we don't want to damage the frame.
No. So we need to drop down about 10 mil to get Rob's measurements, so we'll take about 15 off just to give us some space. So maybe we'll go to 550.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we come up 10 mil,
Yeah.
that'll probably be pretty close.
So we've just done a little measurement, and it's going to be interesting. We've constructed the bike slamming the stem because that's just
cool.
Well, it looks good. But and I'm pretty flexible, but I've got from the center of front axle to the center of the handlebars, I'm 560 mil. But I've got a little bit of wiggle room. I could actually come down a bit, so we're going to do 550 on this because it's a full aero bike. But it's good. It means we've got to raise the bars about 20 mil from the slammed position. So it's going to be interesting to watch the wedge configuration and how that affects the aesthetic of the bike. Let's have a look.
Definitely. So Cervélo send us a whole package with different spacers, different wedges. You can see we've got different configurations of so we can pick and choose the heights that we go to, set up Rob's bike perfectly before we build the whole bike, set the cable lengths and everything. So we want to get this part right first, and then we can get on with the rest of the build. And here's all our parts. Gives us the correct bolts and stuff to use for each configuration. So if we're looking here, we need the 20mm bolt for a 1 spacer. We need the 25mm bolt for 2 spaces. So we're going to go up 10 mils, which is 2 spaces, which is that amount there. And we're going to need the 25mm bolts. So we've already got some bolts in there already, just to hold the bike steady while we did the measurements. Now we're going to swap it all out, install these, and then redo all the bolts. So it's nice that these manufacturers have thought about the install process as well. These coming in 2 parts like this means that we don't have to dismantle all of the parts, and we can just pop the stem off, slot these in around the cables, and then pop the stem back on. So if these were a traditional spacer, a round spacer, which was completely fixed, it would mean we would have to take all of the cables off, all the bars off, slide the cables through this, and then put the bars back on. So they've actually thought about how this would go together in this exact situation. That's the front half of the spacer. That's the back half of the spacer. So that will slot on there. They clip into each other. They're quite nicely made, little carbon spacers. Spacers installed.
But now we're going to put some wedges in to the handlebars and try and get the exact angle of the bars as I like it, and the levers in the position that I'm familiar with. A little bit more complicated than standard, but I think Cervélo has basically given you the options, haven't they?
Yeah, they've given us a kit so we can go 2.5 degrees roll up or 5 degrees roll up. So you've basically got 3 positions you can put.
So my joke is, what would Sean Yates do? Because he is traditionally someone who had his handlebars rotated heavily that way. Sean's a mate of mine. I asked him what the story was, and this is the story behind Sean Yates rotating his handlebars all the way down to a really odd position. And it was this. He was riding one day and the bolt slipped and his handlebars fell down that way, and then he realised that he liked it, and so it was for the rest of his career that he would set his handlebars that way.
But they've actually also used nice bolts, which is probably a good observation. These are nice stainless bolts, and if you were to put some steel ones in there, this part of the bike is where you sweat on, and especially on trainers, indoor trainers, sweat goes here. And Cervélo being a big triathlete market as well, a lot of triathletes have Cervélos, especially time trial bikes. This area gets hounded by sweat and these corrode, and I could imagine trying to get one of these off after it's corroded. They've actually used nice bolts, which is nice, so it's good to see.
So we got the handlebars sorted finally.
Pretty easy. We got the stack adjustment here to your height, and then we've also got the angle adjustment for the handlebars, which is set up to personal preference, so that's what you like. And then once we've got the hoods in the right spot, we can cut the cables to the right length.
Yeah.
So all of this part here is important to do before you cut these cables, because they sit in that nice little neat groove that we saw before. And then, so if you had to go up, you'd obviously need more cable.